cowboy helped Apache lift a fallen tree and the carving underneath named him. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Tom Whitmore, a quiet cowboy, lived alone in the harsh, wide-open plains of the American West. His ranch, nestled between towering cliffs and endless stretches of dry grass, stood as a testament to his solitude. Tom had chosen this life years ago, after the death of his family. The bustling town nearby no longer held any attraction for him, and the solitude of the open land brought him peace. His days were spent working the land, feeding the cattle, and mending fences. Despite his quiet existence, there was always a sense of yearning in his heart, a longing for something more. On one particular day, after a long morning of chopping wood, Tom heard a sound in the distance, a faint rustling of leaves. At first he thought it was just the wind, but the sound grew louder. He stood up, squinting toward the sound, and saw a figure in the distance. A man, dressed in traditional Apache clothing, was struggling to lift a large fallen tree. The man's movements were slow and deliberate, but the weight of the tree was clearly too much for him to handle alone. Tom hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. The Apache people were a part of the land, and Tom had always respected their ways, but he had never been directly involved with them. He knew that the old tension between the settlers and the native tribes ran deep, and approaching an Apache could lead to misunderstandings. But something about the sight of the man, alone and struggling, stirred something within Tom. He grabbed his axe and made his way toward the figure. As he drew closer, the Apache man looked up, his eyes wary but grateful. Tom nodded in silent greeting before stepping up to help. Together they worked to lift the heavy tree, their combined strength making the task manageable. The two men did not speak much, but there was an understanding between them, a silent respect that transcended the differences in their backgrounds. When they finally lifted the tree enough to clear the path, the Apache man stepped back, wiping the sweat from his brow. He gestured to the ground beneath the fallen tree, and Tom, curious, knelt to inspect it. There, carved into the bark of the tree, was a symbol. A symbol that Tom recognized. It was his own name. Tom Whitmore, etched into the wood. The carving was old, faded by time, but unmistakable. The Apache man watched Tom's face, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. It is said that when you are named by the land, it is a sign of respect, the Apache man said, his voice low but steady. Tom looked up, confused. I don't understand, he muttered. The Apache man explained. This tree, the carving, it's a sign. You have helped the land, and the land has remembered you. Tom stood up, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. The quiet cowboy, who had once felt forgotten, now stood connected to something much larger than himself. In that moment, the land, the people, and the past seemed to merge. The man turned and began to walk away, leaving Tom standing alone with the carving. Tom placed a hand on the tree, feeling a deep connection to it, and for the first time in years, he felt truly seen. The cowboy had helped, and in return, the land had named him. Tom stood silently, his hand resting on the tree where his name had been carved. The wind blew softly across the plains, carrying with it the scent of wild flowers and dust. For a moment, he stood there, feeling the weight of the carving beneath his palm. The Apache man had walked away, his figure disappearing into the distance, but the meaning of the moment was far from lost on Tom. He had never expected such a gesture, never imagined that a simple act of kindness could connect him so deeply to the land. The carving was not just a symbol of the help he had given, it was a reminder that his actions had been seen, that they had mattered. Tom had lived a life of solitude, shutting himself off from the world after the tragedy that had taken his family. His ranch had become his sanctuary, a place where he could work in peace, free from the memories that haunted him. Yet, standing before the tree now, he realized that maybe he had been wrong to keep himself isolated. Maybe, just maybe, the world still had room for him. Days passed, and Tom continued his work on the ranch. He couldn't shake the image of the Apache man or the carving beneath the tree. It had been a simple act of helping another person, something he had done countless times in his life, but this time, it felt different. It felt significant. The next morning, as Tom was out tending to the cattle, he spotted something in the distance. A group of riders was approaching, moving slowly across the plains. His heart skipped a beat. He had been living in isolation for so long that the sight of other people was a rare occurrence. As the riders drew closer, Tom's instincts told him to be cautious. The last thing he needed was trouble, especially with the tension between settlers and the Apache people still running high. He grabbed his rifle and approached the gate of his ranch, his eyes narrowing as he tried to make out who the riders were. As they got closer, he saw that the group was made up of Apache warriors, and at the front of the group was the man he had helped. Tom's heart raced, his grip tightening on his rifle. He hadn't expected a return visit, let alone a group of warriors. But instead of fear, he felt something else, a sense of curiosity. The man who had once been a stranger now rode toward him with a purpose. As they drew near, the leader of the group dismounted and walked up to Tom, his expression calm but serious. "You helped me," the Apache man said, his voice deep and steady. "Now we return the favor." Tom felt a sense of relief wash over him, but he was still unsure of what to expect. The Apache man continued, "The tribe has seen your heart, and we have come to offer you protection. No harm will come to your ranch. You are under our watch." Tom's mind raced. Protection? Why would the Apache offer him such a thing? He had only helped one of their own, and yet here they were, offering him something far greater. "I didn't do it for anything in return," Tom said, his voice unsure. "I just did what seemed right." The Apache man nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That is why we have come," he said. "Your kindness has not gone unnoticed. It has been carved into the land, and we honor that." The words hung in the air, and for the first time in years, Tom felt a sense of peace settle over him. The world outside his ranch, with its struggles and its uncertainties, didn't matter as much anymore. He had been seen, and in that simple act of recognition, everything had changed. Days passed since the Apache warriors left, and Tom's life settled back into the quiet rhythm of ranch life. The cattle grazed peacefully, the wind whispered through the tall grass, and the vast sky stretched endlessly above him. But despite the calm, something inside Tom had shifted. The promise of protection from the Apache tribe lingered in his mind, a reminder that he was not as isolated as he had once believed. Tom had always been a man of few words, preferring the company of his animals to people. Yet he couldn't shake the thought of the Apache warriors who had honored him with their presence. Their respect had been something Tom never expected but had longed for in his heart. One afternoon, as he was mending a fence along the eastern edge of his property, Tom heard the familiar sound of hooves approaching. At first, he thought it was another passerby, but the rhythm of the galloping horses was different. It was a steady, deliberate pace. Tom stood up, brushing the dirt from his hands, and looked toward the horizon. A group of riders appeared, silhouetted against the setting sun. His heart raced as he recognized the leader of the group, the Apache man who had helped him lift the fallen tree. This time, there were more warriors, at least a dozen, each riding with purpose. They moved with precision, as if they were on a mission. Tom grabbed his rifle out of instinct, but he hesitated. These were the same people who had promised him protection, not harm. He wondered what had brought them back. As they rode closer, the Apache man nodded to Tom, his expression calm and respectful. "We have come to honor the agreement," the man said. His voice was steady, and his eyes held a quiet strength. Tom's confusion deepened. "Honor the agreement?" he asked. The man dismounted and walked toward Tom. "We offered protection," he explained. "But there is more to be done. The land you care for is sacred to us, and we now stand together. The bond has been made." Tom blinked in surprise. The idea that his ranch, The land he had worked for so many years alone was now connected to the Apache people in such a way was a strange but comforting thought. "What does that mean for me?" Tom asked, his voice uncertain. The Apache man looked out across the plains, as if he were seeing something only he could understand. "It means we will protect this place as we protect our own. No harm will come to you, and you will never have to fear again." Tom felt the weight of those words settle deep into his chest. He had spent so many years trying to keep the world at arm's length, building walls around himself. But here, with the Apache standing beside him, he realized that he didn't have to be alone anymore. He didn't have to protect himself from the world. The world, in its own way, was willing to stand with him. The warriors made camp by Tom's ranch, and over the next few days they worked together. Tom learned about the Apache way of life, their respect for the land, the balance they maintained with nature, and the deep sense of community that bound them. In turn, he shared stories of his own life, of the ranch, and of his solitary existence. The two groups, once so divided by history and prejudice, found a way to coexist. On the third night, as they gathered around a fire, the Apache man turned to Tom. "You have shown us your heart. Now we offer you this." He held out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Tom took it, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a pendant, a simple piece of carved wood, smooth and worn by time. "This is for you," the Apache man said. "A symbol of our bond. It will guide you in times of uncertainty." Tom held the pendant in his hand, feeling the warmth of the wood against his palm. For the first time in years, he felt truly connected to the world around him. The land, the people, and even the quiet cowboy who had once walked alone were now part of something much larger. As the fire flickered in the night, Tom understood that this bond, forged by a simple act of kindness, had changed the course of his life forever. As the days went on, Tom found himself adjusting to this new way of life. The Apache warriors, once strangers to him, had become an essential part of his world. They weren't just protecting his ranch, they were sharing their knowledge with him. In return, Tom shared his own experiences, lessons he had learned from years of living alone. The quiet rhythm of his days, which once consisted solely of ranch work, was now filled with the presence of new friends, new knowledge, and an unspoken understanding. Each morning, the warriors would go about their tasks, sharpening tools, tending to the horses, and securing the perimeter of the ranch. At first, Tom was unsure of how to integrate with them, but over time, he found a sense of camaraderie. He started to help them with their tasks, not out of necessity, but out of a growing respect for their way of life. It wasn't long before he found himself in deep conversations with the Apache leader, who had become more of a mentor to him than just a protector. "The land gives everything," the leader said one evening, sitting by the fire. "But it also takes. We live in balance with it. Our people have always known this." Tom nodded, the words echoing in his mind. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about understanding the deeper connection to the land. He could feel it now, in a way he hadn't before. Each morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, Tom would stand at the edge of his property, looking out across the vast, open plains. The view seemed different now. The land didn't just stretch endlessly before him. It was alive with meaning. And he wasn't alone in it. As the weeks turned into months, Tom began to notice changes. His relationship with the Apache tribe deepened. The bond forged by a simple act of kindness had blossomed into something more profound. He was no longer just a cowboy living alone on a distant ranch. He was part of a community, part of something much larger than himself. One day, as Tom walked toward the eastern edge of the property, he noticed something unusual. A group of children from the nearby Apache settlement were playing near the edge of his land. At first, he thought they might be lost or looking for something, but as he approached, he realized they had come with a purpose. One of the older children, a girl of about 14, stepped forward. She held out a bundle wrapped in cloth, her eyes filled with quiet respect. "This is for you," she said, her voice calm but steady. Tom took the bundle from her hands and carefully unwrapped it. Inside, he found a beautifully carved wooden horse, delicate and finely detailed. It's a gift, the girl explained. A symbol of our people's gratitude for your kindness. Tom was speechless. The gift was not just a token of appreciation, it was a sign of respect, a deep acknowledgement of the bond they had built. Thank you, Tom said softly, his voice thick with emotion. The girl smiled, a look of understanding passing between them. The land gave you to us, she said, and we will always stand with you. The words resonated with Tom in a way he couldn't explain. He had spent so many years trying to block out the world, building walls to keep himself safe from the pain of loss. But now, standing in front of this young Apache girl, holding a gift that symbolized their shared respect, Tom realized that the walls he had built were no longer necessary. He had found something more valuable: connection, understanding, and the kind of community he never thought possible. As the sun began to set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Tom knew that his life had changed forever. He was no longer a lonely cowboy on a solitary ranch. He was part of something greater, something that could not be measured in fences or land but in the ties that bound people together, no matter their background or the color of their skin. And for the first time in years, Tom felt a sense of peace that he had never known before. The seasons changed, and the ranch, once a place of isolation, became a symbol of community and belonging. Tom found himself not only surrounded by the Apache warriors but also by the families of the tribe who had begun to settle near his land. The once quiet ranch now echoed with the sounds of laughter, music, and the rhythmic tasks of daily life. The children, whom Tom had once seen as strangers, now played in the fields, their joyful shouts a reminder of the bond he had formed with the Apache. It wasn't just the Apache warriors who had come to his aid, but the whole community. The women of the tribe shared their knowledge of herbs, medicines, and the land, teaching Tom skills that were foreign to him but invaluable in maintaining the harmony between the land and the people. Tom's days were filled with a steady rhythm of work, learning, and connection. There were still moments when he would walk to the edge of the ranch, looking out over the land he had once claimed for himself. But now, it felt different. He no longer saw just a stretch of dry grass and distant mountains. He saw a place where the past had woven itself into the present, where his actions, however small, had made a lasting impact. One afternoon, as the sun began to set, Tom stood by the fire with the Apache leader. The sky was painted in shades of purple and orange, the last light of the day casting long shadows across the land. The Apache man, who had once been a stranger, now stood as a friend, a mentor, and a brother in arms. "You've come a long way, Tom," the Apache leader said, his voice soft but full of meaning. Tom looked at him, the firelight dancing in his eyes. "I never thought I would be here among you," Tom admitted, his voice filled with gratitude. "But now, it feels like home." The Apache leader nodded, his expression one of understanding. "Home is not just where you live," he said. "It's where you are remembered, where your actions echo in the hearts of others." Tom's heart swelled with a deep sense of peace. The land, the people, and the connections he had made had given him more than he ever thought possible. As they stood together, watching the stars begin to appear in the night sky, Tom knew that his journey was far from over. There was still much to learn, much to give, and much to be grateful for. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, he felt ready to face whatever came his way. The cowboy who had once lived alone, haunted by the ghosts of his past, now stood as a man surrounded by the warmth of family, community, and the unwavering bond he had forged with the Apache tribe. As the months passed, Tom's connection with the Apache tribe deepened. His life, once solitary and quiet, had become intertwined with the people who had shown him a world he never expected to find. The ranch was no longer just a place of work, it had become a symbol of unity, a bridge between two worlds that had once been at odds. Each morning, Tom would wake to the sound of horses' hooves and the laughter of children playing in the fields. The tribe's presence had transformed the landscape around him, not just physically, but emotionally. Tom had grown to care for the people as if they were his own family. One afternoon, as he was out tending to the fence along the western boundary of his property, he noticed a familiar figure approaching. It was the Apache leader, the man who had once saved him from his isolation. Tom had come to regard him as both a mentor and a brother. As the leader dismounted and walked toward him, Tom could see a look of quiet determination on his face. "Tom," the Apache leader said, his voice steady and calm. "There is something we must discuss." Tom paused, setting down his tools. "What is it?" he asked, sensing the seriousness in the man's tone. "There are changes coming," the Apache leader replied, his eyes reflecting the weight of his words. "The land is shifting, and with it, the balance we have built together. Other tribes are noticing the unity we have formed, and they are coming to see if our bond is real." Tom felt a knot form in his stomach. The idea of the Apache tribe being tested by others was a thought he had not fully considered. He had been so focused on the peace they had found that he hadn't thought of the wider implications. "What do we do?" Tom asked, feeling the responsibility of his role more than ever. The Apache leader looked at him with the same calm demeanor that had guided him through so many moments before. "We stand together," he said simply. "The bond we share is stronger than any external force. If others come to challenge us, we will show them the strength of our unity." Tom nodded, feeling a surge of pride. He had never imagined that he would be part of something like this, a bond between cultures that had once been torn apart by conflict. But here he was, standing side by side with the Apache people, ready to face whatever challenges came their way. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere on the ranch shifted. Word of their unity spread, and soon people from other tribes arrived to see for themselves. Some were curious, others skeptical, but all were impressed by the peaceful coexistence that Tom and the Apache tribe had cultivated. They saw a cowboy who had once lived alone, now standing with the Apache, working side by side with them in harmony. One evening, as the sun set over the ranch, Tom sat with the Apache leader by the fire. The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks into the night sky. The air was cool, and the stars above shone brightly. "Do you ever think about how we got here?" Tom asked, his voice quiet in the stillness of the night. The Apache leader looked up at the stars, his face thoughtful. "Every day," he said. "We have come a long way, Tom. But this is just the beginning. The bond we have formed here is not just for us, but for those who come after us." Tom sat in silence, letting the words sink in. He had never been one for grand ambitions, but as he looked around at the people who had become his family, he realized that this bond was worth protecting. It was something that could last long after he was gone. As the fire burned low and the night grew quiet, Tom knew that his journey was far from over. The path ahead would be uncertain, but for the first time in his life, he was no longer afraid to face it. The cowboy, once a solitary man on a lonely ranch, had found his place in the world, a place where he was no longer alone, but part of something much bigger than himself. The days grew longer, and Tom began to realize how much his life had changed. The Apache tribe was no longer just a group of people living near his ranch. They had become his family, his community. The quiet cowboy, who once spent his days alone, now found himself part of a larger tapestry, one that was woven from trust, respect, and shared experiences. As the seasons shifted, the Apache people shared their traditions with Tom. They taught him how to read the stars, how to hunt, and how to live in balance with the land. In return, Tom shared his knowledge of the ranch, of raising cattle and growing crops. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about thriving together. One afternoon, as Tom was working in the field, he heard the sound of hooves approaching. Looking up, he saw the familiar figure of the Apache leader riding toward him. His face was calm, but there was something in his eyes that made Tom pause. The leader dismounted and walked toward Tom, his expression serious. "There is news," he said, his voice steady. Tom nodded, sensing the weight of the situation. "What kind of news?" The Apache leader looked out across the ranch, his gaze distant. "Some of the other tribes are restless," he said. "They fear that our unity with the settlers is a threat. They are preparing to test us." Tom felt a chill run through him. He had known that their peace with the Apache was fragile, but he had hoped that the bond they had forged would be enough to hold it together. What should we do? Tom asked. The leader turned to him, his eyes firm. We stand together, he said simply. We have built something here, and we will defend it, no matter the cost. Tom felt a deep sense of responsibility settle in his chest. He had never been one for conflict, but now he knew that he could not stand by and watch everything he had worked for slip away. The following days were filled with preparation. The Apache warriors trained, sharpening their skills and preparing their weapons. Tom worked alongside them, learning their ways and strengthening his bond with the tribe. As the tension grew, Tom couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. The man who had once been isolated, consumed by his past, was now standing shoulder to shoulder with the Apache, ready to defend everything they had built together. One evening, as the sun set and the air grew cool, Tom stood at the edge of his ranch, looking out across the plains. The land stretched out before him, vast and empty, but full of meaning. He thought about his journey, how he had gone from a man haunted by loss to someone who had found a place to belong. The Apache leader appeared beside him, his presence calm and steady. Are you ready? He asked. Tom nodded, feeling a quiet strength build inside him. I am, he said. Together, they turned toward the distant horizon, knowing that whatever came their way, they would face it as one. The bond between them was unbreakable, forged in acts of kindness, respect, and a shared vision for the future. As the first stars began to twinkle in the sky, Tom felt a sense of peace that he had never known before. He was no longer alone. He was part of something much greater than himself, something that would endure through time. As the days went by, the air grew thick with anticipation. The horizon seemed endless, and the quiet of the plains was now broken by the sound of hooves and the steady hum of preparation. Tom stood by the fence, watching as the Apache warriors sharpened their skills, their movements synchronized and fluid. The ranch, once a quiet corner of the world, now felt like the heart of something much larger. The bond between Tom and the Apache tribe had transformed his life in ways he could not have imagined. It was no longer just about surviving on the land. It was about thriving together, learning from one another, and standing strong in the face of any challenge. The Apache leader, who had become Tom's closest ally, was always nearby, offering wisdom and guidance. Together, they had built a foundation of trust that neither side had expected to form. It was a partnership forged not by necessity, but by mutual respect. As the weeks passed, the news of their unity spread. Tom could feel the weight of their connection growing stronger, and it made him realize how much more there was to fight for. His thoughts often drifted to the past, the years of solitude, the deep wounds left by the loss of his family. But now, those memories didn't hold the same weight. He had found a new purpose. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the land, Tom and the Apache leader stood side by side, looking out across the plains. The air was still, and the only sound was the distant call of birds returning to their nests. What will happen when the others come? Tom asked, his voice steady but filled with the uncertainty of the unknown. The Apache leader glanced at him, his face calm. We will show them what we have built, he replied. We will show them that strength comes not from dividing us, but from standing together. Tom nodded, the weight of the words settling within him. He had never imagined that he would be in a position to defend something so important, something that meant more than just land or survival. This was about honor, respect, and the future they would build for those who came after them. The following days were filled with quiet tension. The Apache warriors continued their training, honing their skills for whatever might come. Tom, too, prepared, but it wasn't just physical readiness that occupied his mind. He was learning a new way to think, to see the world through the eyes of the Apache people. It was a perspective grounded in respect for nature, for life, and for the strength of unity. One afternoon, just as the sky began to darken, the first sign of their visitors appeared. A small group of riders, their horses kicking up dust as they approached. Tom's heart raced. It was time. The Apache leader stood next to him, his gaze unwavering. Let them come, he said quietly. We are ready. Tom took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. The air felt different now, charged with the anticipation of what was to come. It wasn't just a test of their unity. It was a test of everything they had built. As the riders drew closer, Tom felt a sense of calm wash over him. This wasn't about fighting. It was about standing firm in what they had created together. When the riders finally reached them, Tom stood tall beside the Apache leader. The strangers eyed them with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, but Tom didn't flinch. He wasn't the man he had been when they first met. He had grown, learned, and found strength in the very people who had once been strangers. The Apache leader stepped forward, his voice clear and strong. "We stand together," he said. "And together, we will face whatever comes." The words hung in the air, a promise not just to the riders, but to the land, to the community, and to everything they had built. The tension that had filled the air slowly began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of resolve that Tom had never known before. This was more than just a fight for survival. It was a fight for something worth defending: unity, respect, and the future they had created together. The days that followed were filled with a sense of quiet anticipation. The riders who had arrived were not enemies, but instead, they had come to witness what the Apache and Tom had built together. Tom stood at the edge of his ranch, the sun setting behind him, casting a golden hue across the land. The group of riders, who had come from distant lands, were watching from a distance, observing the unity between Tom and the Apache tribe. Tom felt a weight in the air, but it wasn't the weight of conflict. It was the weight of expectation. They had all come to see if the bond was real, if it was something that could stand the test of time. And Tom, for the first time, was not afraid. The Apache leader, who had become more than just a mentor, but a brother in arms, stood beside him. "The land will show them what we have built," the leader said, his voice calm and steady. Tom nodded, feeling the truth of those words resonate in his heart. It wasn't just the strength of arms that had brought them here. It was the strength of character, of unity, of standing together. As the riders drew closer, Tom could see the curiosity in their eyes. They weren't sure what to expect, but there was a quiet respect in their gaze. They had heard of the Cowboy and the Apache warriors, but now they were seeing it for themselves. The bond that had been formed, the peace that had been built, was undeniable. Tom took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his past and the present moment settle within him. He had spent so many years avoiding connection, avoiding the world, afraid of the pain it might bring. But now, as he stood side by side with the Apache people, he realized that the pain of the past had led him to this moment. It had led him to something worth fighting for. The Apache leader stepped forward, his voice carrying across the silence. "We stand united," he said, "and together, we will face whatever challenges come our way." Tom followed the leader's lead, standing tall and unwavering. He had nothing left to prove to anyone. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about something deeper, something lasting. The riders, once skeptical, now nodded in silent acknowledgement. They had seen the truth for themselves. The bond between Tom and the Apache tribe was not just a fleeting moment. It was a testament to the power of unity and respect. As the evening wore on, the air grew still, and the stars began to fill the sky. Tom stood there, his heart full, watching as the people who had once been strangers now moved together in harmony. The land, which had once been a place of isolation, had transformed into a place of belonging. For the first time in his life, Tom felt truly at home. The journey that had brought him here was not just a journey of survival. It was a journey of connection, of healing, and of hope. And as the firelight flickered in the distance, Tom knew that the future was bright, not because it was free from challenges, but because it was a future where he would never have to face them alone.